Welcome to Golden Girl, a space where we dive deep into health, healing, connection, and community. I'm your host, Becca Golden, and this podcast is all about sharing and documenting my journey. Each episode, we'll discuss topics like health and wellness, what I'm learning in therapy, work-life balance, relationships, community, and all the ways I strive for more aliveness and presence every day. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Golden Girl. On today's episode, I have a wonderful friend here with me, Isa Allen. As part of this podcast, you know that I love to talk about health, healing, connection, and community. And Isa just represents really all four of those things. She has been such a gift to me in my own healing journey in so many ways. She's a wealth of knowledge, and her own personal healing story is really inspiring too. And I'm going to learn more about it today. So Isa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Becca. Thank you for inviting me on here. So proud of you, so inspired by you, and I feel so grateful to be in community with you.
Thank you. To start us off, can you tell us a little bit about you? Introduce yourself, give us some background for someone who doesn't know you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Isa, and I am someone who has lived and worked in many spaces and many communities throughout my life. I have been a registered nurse. I was a medical professional for a little while and transitioned out of that industry after COVID. I was a COVID nurse in New York. And then transitioned into a time of deep discovery in my own spirituality and my own healing journey. And that led to a path of facilitation, a path of coaching, a path of working with women and psychedelics. So I spent 5 years working as a psychedelic facilitator. I've lived in South America. I've lived here in Austin now for a few years, where we met in community. Overall, I would say that I'm an artist. I am a creator, and I'm a very curious person and have lived a rather unconventional life and broken from some conventions, or not some, many conventions that I was raised with, and I've always just had this very curious and independent spirit, and it's taken me to some very interesting places.
When we were prepping for this conversation, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about how we met. I don't even really remember how we met besides just through Sisterhood. Do you want to tell the story?
Yeah. Well, we met in a women's group, a women's circle, and for anyone who might not be familiar with what that is, it's really a simply an intentional circle and community of women to come and connect with each other. And this particular circle is founded on a shared love of soup. One of our dear friends, Audrey, shout out to you, Audrey.
Shout out to Audrey.
Many years ago, probably close to 3, had an idea of just what would happen if I made soup and invited some women that I've been sort of circling around community with and would like to connect more deeply with. And so that idea blossomed into a beautiful and expansive community of many women here. And we gather once a month. We make soup. We sit in a circle, and each one of us is invited to share really what's on our heart, what's alive inside of us in a non-judgmental space, in a space where we're just witnessing and being witnessed in that practice. There's no advice. It's not therapy, and it's very powerful to be seen and to practice seeing other women through every season of life, through their storms, through their challenges and struggles, as well as their celebrations and breakthroughs and successes. And just that experience alone has been very transformative for all of us. And it also it it inspired so many co-creations and collaborations and projects and ceremonies, because many of us are really committed to the deep inner work. And it's very powerful to engage in that work in a safe space where you're kind of, okay, like, I know these people, we're opening ourselves up to these deep processes and these deep experiences of working with medicines, with expanded states.
So now that we know how we met,
Yeah.
can you talk about your own healing story or just your story in general? You gave some of your background professionally, but what has it looked like for you as you've navigated these twists and turns of your life, the many seasons that you've gone through,
Mm.
as you sit here today and you are really planning big things for your future? You have so much momentum and excitement of what you're building
Mm.
that's so powerful. But I
Mm.
want to know how you've gotten there. What did
Mm.
your journey look like?
Mm. It's been quite a journey.
Mhm.
I've always been a very deep feeler. I've always been very connected to spirit, to energy, to the unseen. And as a child, I just felt very connected to the trees, to nature. I felt really at home and at peace, just wandering and exploring the forest, but also really everything and everywhere. My mother would tell me that whenever she brought me to places, I would just disappear because I would always be off exploring and wandering. So I think that there is this essence inside of me, like a deep traveler, wandering archetype within me. So I've always just been an explorer, and childhood was very idyllic. Lots of laughter, lots of beautiful family, friends, community time, just really such a beautiful and blessed childhood. Adolescence is where things took a turn for me, and I was, this sort of kind of golden retriever like child, just happy playing sports, focused in school, popular. And all of a sudden, when I turned 15, darkness, depression, a feeling just took over, and I lost myself, really. And it was really confusing and really scary. And the time that I was growing up in, similar to you, like, this is 20 years, a little less than 20 years ago, but we just didn't have the kind of language, vocabulary, and understanding around trauma and the nervous system the way that we do now. And so my parents, they were confused. They didn't know where their, like, golden girl went. And there was a lot of disconnection, and or I should say, we lost connection, me and my family, or me with my primary caregivers. So it felt like sort of like an emotional battlefield in the house throughout most of my time in high school. I spent some time in a mental hospital, mental hospital. And that was extremely traumatizing. That really made me so afraid and angry towards authority figures, towards the adults, really.
Did you feel like you had a say in going, or were you told that you were going?
I was told that if I didn't go, there would be, like, repercussions, and, you know, it ended up being, like, a 10 to 15-year reconciliation, forgiveness journey between me and my parents, and we have since, like, really come out the other side stronger than ever, and honestly so, so honored and to be their daughter, and likewise, they feel really honored to have me as their daughter. It's beautiful. Um, it was a really tough time. I didn't trust them. I didn't trust myself. I was angry, and I had no tools to regulate my emotions or to process them. So they just became frozen. I became frozen and dissociated. And it just felt like I didn't belong. And I felt invisible at school. The way that I reacted and responded to the mental health challenges was by directing all of my anger inwards or at my family and essentially just like saying fuck you to the world. And I became a rebel. I was smoking cigarettes in high school. I had fake IDs. I was clubbing and hanging out with adults like as a child and completely checking out. And that was a really tough time. That was a scary time. And all the while, I just knew that there was a meaning to all of this. So while this sort of intense depression and darkness came into my life, so did um, this attraction to spirituality and to more mystical and esoteric ideas. And that was obviously my way of finding meaning at a very early age. So it started with astrology, and it started with yeah, just wanting to understand, wanting to find a structure or a system to provide meaning for what I was going through. And so that was really the in the beginning of my spiritual path was this crisis, a mental health crisis. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah, I really want to thank you for sharing all of that. We've never talked about that before. And I think there are many people out there who can relate to it in some way, whether their journey was exactly the same as yours, which I have a feeling there are a lot of people out there who have had almost an exact same circumstances that have happened to other people. But also, even if it didn't happen the exact same way, so many people can resonate with what you just described, feeling like they had a really happy childhood and then all of a sudden something shifted and it felt like it was happening to them. They didn't understand. It wasn't their fault, but it causes tension between you and your primary caregivers because
Mhm.
they want to help you. They don't know how.
Mhm.
You want to feel understood,
Mhm.
but you feel betrayal from everyone around you,
Yeah.
including the authority and the structure.
And my friends, I lost all my friends their freshman year of high school because I went from being like, on the sports team, totally normal, to like the girl who's like not going to school. And it was an intense sort of like fall from grace in a way.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went from the being kind of think popular girl to total pariah like in
Yeah,
1 year. And that was harrowing.
of
It
course.
really created a lot of a sense of just like unsafety with women too. That took a long time and many different iterations of friendship and um, dynamics to arrive at this place now where I'm surrounded by incredible, healthy, present, and attuned women. But the betrayal was real, and the community that I grew up in as well there was just so much pressure. Like, this was the Northeast and Massachusetts, Boston suburbs, where there's so much pressure to perform at such a high level, to have everything figured out when you're a child, to get into that Ivy League, to, collect degrees and to hit all of those, markers, external markers of success. And it just, what I witnessed in my peers and in my own self was so much stress and despair and um pain, and it and
Mhm.
it people were suffering.
And some people continue to suffer their whole lives. Some people don't find any meaning in what's happening to them. Some people continue to associate their self-worth with their accomplishments and their achievements. And they believe that if they are not getting into that Ivy League school, if they aren't having everything perfect, then they're not worthy of love or they're not worthy of belonging. There are so many people who never get through that. I'm really grateful that on my personal journey, I found resources when I did because I was on that path too. I associated my self-worth with my accomplishments, and there
Yeah,
was so much pressure and
yeah.
so much pain that I was carrying. And I feel incredibly grateful every day that I have been able to move through so much of that and find a group of attuned women who validate me and understand me.
Mhm.
You're one of these women who have
Likewise.
shown me what it looks like to move through situations with grace
Mm.
and with surrender and with trust. And one of the reasons that I have this podcast is in hopes that someone out there hears a conversation like this and understands that there is another side to this. You can make it through the pain and the high pressure and everyone else's expectations, the alienation that you feel from yourself and everyone around you when your body and your heart are going through changes that you don't understand. So I'm really glad that you're sharing this.
Mm. Mm.
And just revisiting back to your story, so you found astrology.
Yeah.
That's the stepping stone. I'm guessing a lot of people can relate to that one too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, "Wait, what? All these 12th house placements?" If anyone is into astrology, they know I got 5 planets in the 12th house, y'all. So, it started with astrology, and I eventually did go to college. I moved to New York City, and I was at a very liberal arts, like, downtown artist vibe. Um, so with I ended up in a school with a bunch of other rebels and radicals, and I dyed my hair blue. I got a septum ring, and I lived my, New York starving artist archetype life for a few years. I did have a beautiful relationship with a man for a number of years that was very healing, and decided at some point, I think I was 25, I had jumped around. I worked in restaurants. I had been doing this performance art. I
Wait, what was the performance art?
um So I ended up connecting with a few of these incredible dancers, Ralph Lemon and Okwi Okpokwasili. And I did these workshops with them in downtown New York. And it was the first time I experienced, I guess, it was an altered state. Although we were just dancing. They were artists who had these really profound insights. They were philosophers, and their medium was the body. Their medium was dance, but not the type of dance, seeing a ballet. It was just like, let's play with light, let's play with sound and just the body, and offer these cues or these poems or these words, or in the world of contact improvisation, these scores that will create an emergent dance or experience or performance. And these are solo works, these are group works, and they were and I just had an immediate oh, I know how to do this. And it's so I just connected with the artists and they were like, who are you? And why don't you come in, like hang out with us? And so I just spent some time with them and have assisted them in some of their own works. And that was my college thesis, was this performance that I made. I created this film shot in different parts of New York. It was all very sort of avant-garde and random, seemingly. And my partner at the time, he made this music score that was also sort of like a little Radiohead, like some sounds of the city that we had captured and recorded. And then I was just like moving across the stage, just dancing and feeling and connecting, but it all just looked pretty cool. I'm just seeing like parts of my own self now that I'm really connecting to she was already doing it.
When you said your dissertation was creating a film,
Yeah.
I'm like, how interesting.
How interesting.
Yeah, we'll get
Right?
there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
And I was just living so creatively, and at some point the cultural conditioning kicked in around 25, and I guess I had my quarter life crisis, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? These friends around me are advancing in their corporate careers. Like, I've got other friends who are starting to, take off and be promoted, and I'm just like this artist with this cool performance. So I had a crisis because I still was so disconnected and honestly disempowered, and was like, okay, well, what is the thing that everyone tells me I'm good at, and how can I like find a box to fit myself in? And so I decided on nursing because I had been sort of everyone's therapist my whole life because of my own mental health struggles. People felt naturally attracted to me, like they could trust me and open up to me. People felt safe with me. I was always that friend who was like the emotional support friend. And I really have worked a lot through those dynamics because it was not always healthy. And I was deriving meaning and belonging and a sense of worthiness by being very helpful and supportive to other people. I bet some empaths out there can relate. And so all of that was fueling me to pursue nursing. And the only problem was that I had failed all of high school science. And I had a liberal arts degree. So, but here's the thing about me. Like, once I set my sights on something and I'm like, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it. And so I went to the local college, Brooklyn College, and essentially taught myself biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, like anatomy, physiology. And if anyone has been through medical training, they know that it's intense. And those prereqs are sometimes harder than the actual coursework and material, just because of the sheer volume you have to learn and memorize. And I was an adult learner at this point and didn't have any evidence of my performance in school that I was a good student. But I was like, I will be an A student and I will get myself into the best program that I can. And I did. I got into Columbia and got myself into this Ivy League master's program and took on a new identity. But all the while, because I wasn't moving from an empowered place, I completely overrided my body. And it was the beginning of the end. It's so interesting. All of that time nursing school, it was such a stressor. I developed an eating disorder during that time. I was losing contact with my creative self and just totally going all in on my coursework, which is, I think, important in some seasons of life. The cost of it was was big. my relationship fell apart, but I went through this nursing program, which ultimately culminated with the pandemic. And that was, yeah, that was a very, very interesting experience being a nursing student and called in on to the front lines and working in the Bronx at a COVID hospital during the first wave, not knowing what was going on, like not confident at all in my clinical skills. And we were in, it felt like an apocalypse. And being in all the PPE, working night shifts, like the city on lockdown, everyone was dying. And I thought that I felt useless because because every other person was coding. And all I could do was essentially support people or support the other medical staff.
What do you mean everyone else was coding? What does that
People
mean?
people were there and usually suffering from respiratory failure if they were in the hospital then. And the COVID hospitals, I mean, all the hospitals were COVID hospitals, but if, folks were there, it's because they were very sick and they often had many other comorbidities and acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS. That's what most of those people were dealing with. And so people were dying very quickly. And there were not enough medical staff and facilities to support the folks. And so we were running around.
Yeah.
And
I just didn't know what coding meant.
oh, yeah. Well, there's different codes. It's when, someone's essentially, needs life support or there's a medical emergency,
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Times with the times.
Yeah. That was, again, a feeling took over me during that moment because I was also one of the few students who were placed at a hospital where it was just really hard and intense. A lot of other students were in kind of other units. This was just like full on. People are dying, doing postmortem care.
Oh.
I was facilitating goodbyes with my cell phone for people's family members because they couldn't come in. We didn't even look like humans because we're dressed in all of that PPE.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, that's a threshold. And there were there's actually many similarities that I tracked during my years of being an ayahuasca facilitator because yeah, just you're there for people at these big life transitions, and it's scary. And although at the time I thought I had this perception that I didn't have much to offer, what I see now is that the presence, the empathy, and the care that I was able to offer these people was actually so, so valuable and precious and important. But at that time, I was just like, well, I don't know how to use this, or that. But really, that presence, especially during that moment when it was so scary, we really had no idea what was happening. And then I finished nursing school, and then we went into a second lockdown because the pandemic was still raging in 2021. And I had started a doctorate program. I was going to become a midwife and felt this connection to women and to, these thresholds. Birth was a threshold that I was called to. But I have to say that my nervous system, I was fried. I had just been through, 3+ years of advanced coursework, got a master's degree, then went through the pandemic, worked, lockdowns. The city it really felt so, so scary. That summer was the summer George Floyd was murdered by the police, and there were so many protests. And I was at some of those protests, with other medics, and we were like beaten up by the NYPD. And I just reached this moment. I was like, this is not working. None of this. I don't think I can continue. And I had a moment and yeah. What happened? I connected with spirituality comes back in here. Started connecting with mythology, in particular goddess mythology. And I really felt a strong connection and a resonance to this one goddess called Hecate. And this goddess is a goddess who her domain and her specialty is helping people who are moving through big thresholds and crossroads at life. She's said to carry two torches. One torch is mercy, one torch is severity. Think of her as like, a grandmother, like a crone, this wise woman who will guide you on your path, who will hold a light for you and guide your path as you're walking through the dark, helping you navigate these transitions that are very challenging. And it's this energy that also calls you forward to find your power and to find your authority and your agency to make a choice and to choose which direction you want to move. And I decided that I wanted to completely change my life. And so I followed a friend to Mexico in winter of 2021. And my whole life changed.
This is so crazy to picture.
Yeah, it was wild.
Because the version of you that I know is this goddess woman who's in the jungle leading ayahuasca journeys and speaking to the spirits. Like, this is so wild to picture you working. First of all, living in New York in the first place is crazy. I'm like, but what about the trees? Where were you? Like, how were you connecting with the earth? Like, it's just, this is such a different era of your life that I've never known about you. I mean, I knew some of this. And for anybody listening who might be thinking about their career, like I know my sister's thinking about career changes and stuff right now. And I think these stories are so inspiring because it really gives people permission to question everything and to change everything.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for where this goes next.
And to take risks. When you're young, it's really recommended to take risks. Like, that's the time. Especially in your 20s.
And if you didn't when you're young, you can still do it.
You can still do it whenever. It's just like when you're young, you have why not? Like, go discover who you are.
And I didn't do that when I was younger, so I'm doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, I started really in earnest, I'd say at 27, around that time. For anyone who is following with the astrology thread, that's around the Saturn return. Yeah. And so I followed my dear friend Morgan to Mexico, and she went to Oaxaca, and it was just not on my radar, but at the time, I just knew that I needed a break, and so I wrote to Colombia, and I said, hi, I know you gave me a scholarship, but I'm going to pause that, and I need to go and take care of myself. And they were like, okay. And I kind of knew at the moment, at that time, when I sent the emails, like, I don't think I'm going back, because I told them it was just a leave of absence, but yeah, I went to Mexico, met up with my friend Morgan, and there was no plan. I bought a one-way ticket. I didn't know what I was doing, but on some level I knew that I needed to just follow this movement of energy. And I do feel sometimes when we're going through these big life transitions, or there's a moment where you just feel like everything is falling or falling apart, when those are the moments when we can become really available, if we call in support or just allow the falling apart to happen, it's really beautiful, because some greater intelligence will reveal itself. And it reveals itself in a multitude, like infinite number of ways to each person. So that was where I was. I was kind of just feeling guided by something I couldn't name or I couldn't put my finger on. And I, ended up in this little beach town in Oaxaca. Mazunte is the name of it. Well, started in Puerto Escondido, and immediately, like, it's like time slowed down. When I arrived there, I noticed immediately that the pace of life was dramatically slower than anything I had ever been used to. And of course, I was coming from New York and a city lifestyle. And so my own mind, like, I just was quite agitated at first. It took a lot of time for my own body and the pace of my mind and just my mind, I'd say, and the body to sort of sync up with the life and the culture and the people who I was encountering in this small little beach town in Mexico. Ended up in this even more remote lagoon, Chacagua, where there was nothing to do besides sit on this beach and sit in a hammock and stare at the water. There's nothing else. And it was a long boat ride, and I was just like, "Oh my God. What am I doing? Why can't I just enjoy being on this beach? Why am I trying to like figure out what to do or how to like make the most of my days?" And I saw in my other friends and the other people there, like people were just like relaxing. And I could not relax. I was so uncomfortable. I just could not stay where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened. And then a few days later, I was back in this little town, Mazunte, and I met this woman, this Italian woman. She invited me to a Temazcal, which is a sweat lodge ceremony.
A sweat lodge ceremony?
Yes, a Temazcal. Yes. This is it's an ancestral practice, an ancestral medicine practice that is cross-cultural that you'll find in various parts of the world. And essentially, it's a ceremony, it's a sacred ceremony that involves entering into a structure that's been made out of earth materials, clay, and bringing in hot rocks that have been cooking on a fire, on a sacred fire, and closing this little temescal, this hut, this lodge, and using the waters to create essentially a sauna. But it's like an OG sauna. It is like it is the oldest type of sauna, in which you have an elder present who is singing songs, holding the ceremony, leading the ceremony, singing songs in their native language, in their native tongue. And it is a very sacred space, but it's also a very challenging experience because you are sitting in a very, very close, dark space. You're on the ground and you're in the pitch black, and the water is keep being thrown on these hot stones which have transformed spiritually into the spirits of ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And the ceremony is organized in such a way that there's in this tradition, there were 4 doors, 4 gateways, which correspond to the elements or the 4 bodies: the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the etheric, energetic body. And during each of these gates, that particular layer of self is being cleansed and purified through the sweat, through the songs, through the effort, through the sacrifice of sitting and staying in a very uncomfortable, physically, mentally, spiritually uncomfortable experience that is in service to your healing and the healing of humanity. And I was humbled. I was on the ground crying and having my first true big release, like a really big healing process, a catharsis. Of course, up until then, I'd done lots of different therapies, but I had never been able to access the that visceral pain and be able to express and release and be held and witnessed in a group of strangers and be carried by the lineage and the tradition. And that was, that was very eye-opening. That was an awakening experience for me. And I ended up staying in that little beach town in Mexico for about a year. I lived there. I studied there. I trained there. I needed to understand what I had just experienced. And again, always a wanderer and curious. I knew that there was something here for me. And I kept meeting people who invited me into these environments, into these experiences, not just to kind of receive, but also was being asked to, here's the drum. Can you sing a song, please? Here, can you help us smudge, which is a kind of a practice that involves lighting different herbs to cleanse people's energies. So I was being just invited into, I guess you could say, an apprenticeship that ended up being many years long, that took me very, very deep into the world of curanderismo.
What is
It's like the folk medicine that come from Mesoamerican, South American traditions of healing that are very much ancestral and connected to the elements, connected to ancestral veneration, connected to spirit, to ceremony, and to the ancient intelligence of the earth, and working with nature and the elements as beings, being in relationship to these beings, being in relationship to the land, being in relationship to ancestral medicines. So
this era of your life sounds so much like how you described yourself as a little girl.
yeah,
That everyone's like, "Where's Issa?" And you're just exploring and learning and discovering.
and that's where I was named Issa, because before that, my New York self and everything prior had been Izzy. So if you ever meet people who have known me from New York or from my childhood, they'll call me Izzy. But in Mexico, my friends, like, I was mostly friends with Mexicans and people from South America, and they all just started calling me Isa. They're like, Isa! And so it stuck because this whole other side of me was coming online.
Again.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds how you described yourself as a child.
Yeah.
This explorative,
Yeah.
wide-eyed,
Playful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
really, really sweet.
Yeah. So I ended up living in this community. I guess lots of hippies, lots of international facilitators. I dabbled in tantra. I dabbled in, more than dabbled in the various kind of sacred ceremonies, but I hadn't actually worked with any, psychoactive plants or psychedelics yet. But I did start to feel the call after a yoga training or some bodywork training that I did. I felt the call. There was this medicine woman in our little community who held these medicine ceremonies on her land up in the mountains. And I did this cord cutting ritual with her where she cut my hair. And it was a very spiritual, sort of deep work. Yeah. But I knew that, okay, I want to sit with her. I want to experience this medicine that people are talking about. And it was a peyote ceremony, which is a sacred cactus medicine. And it was a women's ceremony. And it was, I'm just like like feeling into that memory. It was beautiful. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was so beautiful. Now that I've just, all these years later, hundreds of ceremonies later, what I remember is, so we were sitting around this fire, and throughout the night, we had the opportunity, the invitation to take cacao beans or rice grains or millet or seeds and, hold these seeds and speak our prayers into them and make offerings to the fire and just pray that way and sing as well. And at one point, the woman who was facilitating the ceremony offered her support and deeper kind of facilitation for us one-on-one. And it all just felt very natural to me, like I'd done this before. And so that seed was planted. And by then I started singing more, and singing became this huge source of joy and healing and liberation for me, and really bringing my voice online and sharing it and discovering that, oh yeah, I love to sing. Like more than anything, I would make my whole family sit and listen to me sing as a child. But at some point, in school, in the schooling times, I guess I just at some point received the message that I wasn't good enough to sing or to pursue or to even keep it as a hobby.
Mhm.
Um
I've
so
received that same messaging, by the way, and I've heard your voice. It is I don't even have words to describe your voice. It is
hmm,
medicine in itself for anyone who gets the opportunity to hear you sing. It is really life-changing. You have the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. It's
hmm,
truly like nectar. Like it's so it it evokes emotion,
hmm.
and it's really unbelievable.
Thank you, babe.
Mhm.
Evokes emotion because it is emotion. It is the energy, and I'm singing the energy that's moving through my body. And I've been so blessed to receive songs receive songs from people, receive songs from plants, receive songs from the moon. It's really just once that voice is activated, that channel is open, then all of the material inside of us becomes source of inspiration and a resource. And that was how I learned. That was my relationship to singing during this moment, during this time in my life, and how I teach it now. And that it is really the tool and the instrument of our body. And the more that I learned about the nervous system and the vagus nerve and all the various functions of the vagus nerve and how it supports our body in healing and recovering, and that we can improve our vagal tone by making sounds.
Mhm.
It was given to us for that purpose, to express, to move. And in medicine traditions, at least in ancestral medicine traditions, singing is a modality. it's it's a facilitator. Songs and music and sound are technologies to move energy, to transmute energy. And so the more that I was discovering my voice as a powerful resource, the more that I was being invited to share it in spaces. And I ended up at an ayahuasca retreat. And the grandmother vine had been calling me for years. I think I had first discovered it as a teenager on maybe some YouTube video, and people were like vomiting. You hear these stories like, you vomit your guts the whole night, you go to hell, you see all the scary things. And I was like, one day. And that day was approaching. Like I just knew that it was coming. And then when I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I went to the retreat. The owner of the retreat was there. I connected with this woman, and she was my roommate, and we both were like deep on our kind of seeking in our seeking stage, where we just wanted to like get to the root of all of it.
Mhm.
We were not satisfied with just 4 ayahuasca ceremonies. The both of us went down to Peru 2 months later to train to become facilitators in the jungle and, go down this path with the grandmother vine. And so 2 months after drinking the medicine for the first time, I was in the jungle, the Peruvian Amazon, moved there, and was now living with shamans and facilitating retreats, international retreats, and learning all about this particular tradition and the jungle of working with plants in a very intentional way to cleanse the body, to cleanse the spirit. This particular tribe that I was working with and living with, the Shipibo Kunibo, they are considered to be the, guardians of this medicine and the real guardians of the jungle. Their knowledge of all of the various medicinal plants and the uses is profound. And again, it was a very, very, my time in the jungle. If anyone has spent time in the jungle, you know what I mean when I say it's intense. It's like the wild, true wild. The plants even, like everything wants to bite you and eat you. The jungle will teach you how to really protect yourself. And what an experience. I ended up making a documentary from just that initiation. I think, I'll stop there just because the jungle is so, we could talk a lot about that. And
the jungle is something that we could do an entire episode on, or people can watch your documentary on it too.
Totally.
I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, I'll definitely
I think you had just published it right when we met.
Probably.
You had just finished it up right when we met.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, if I watch this, maybe she'll be friends with me.
Sorry.
I didn't watch it and you became friends with me anyway, so.
Yeah.
All right, so from the jungle.
Okay.
To now.
So I lived in the jungle for about a year. I also lived in the Sacred Valley. I was running these retreats, and that was like my residency for plant medicine facilitation. Within a year, had facilitated like over 500 people through ceremonies. It was hardcore. And I was also drinking lots of medicine too on my off nights. So it was just ceremony after ceremony, running these retreats, learning Spanish, learning songs, starting to do these deeper initiations myself with my teachers there. And that involved these practices. One of them is called Dieta, and it's a way of connecting more deeply with the various medicinal plants in the jungle, and it involves being in isolation. It involves essentially shutting out and shutting off all connections to the outside world and merging your whole body, your consciousness, your spirit with the spirit of a plant. And this is how the shamans will learn how to cure people and work with people and work with these plants as they go into these deep times and apprenticeships with the plants themselves. And then they drink more medicine to learn how to channel the kind of energy of that plant in a ceremony. I know this sounds very esoteric and out there, but for them, this is their paradigm. It's a system, and it's very ancient, and it's ancestral, and it really requires someone from the Western world you need to suspend your reality in some ways and open yourself up to an entirely different way of orienting to this world where plants and trees are beings. not just resources, not just these inanimate life forms, but, fully formed and autonomous sovereign beings. And the beautiful thing is that if you can tune into that, if you can, and you can, when you spend a lot of time in the jungle will start talking to you. And so I was, really deep in this work and on a path serving this medicine. And, I encountered a lot of darkness as well here. I experienced a lot of manipulation and had my own initiations with, working with people who didn't have my best interests at heart. And that was another initiation to sovereignty, to, learning that the moment I give my power and authority to something or someone outside of me, even if it's a medicine, that I'm putting myself at risk. And, I learned the hard way, and a lot of people do. And so I left the jungle kind of in worse shape than I arrived. Very fractured, fragmented, and had been, I'd abused by people in positions of authority and power over me in those, altered states. So I had some healing to do, and beautiful, I met this woman while facilitating. Her name is Audrey, and she and I connected one time. We were in this Wachuma ceremony, hitting the drum, looking at each other in the medicine, and something just clicked. And she was on her way out. We had found each other on Instagram and discovered we had someone in common. Funnily enough, it was her partner at the time. So we had this really interesting synchronicity. And I had seen this person, her partner at the time, in Mexico right before I went to Peru, like 8 months before that. After 10 years. This guy who was her partner was my boss like 10 years ago when I worked on the Obama campaign in 2012 in Colorado. It was so random.
Whoa.
And it's
super random.
Super random, but I was kind of like, okay, I'm paying attention. And she had said to me, you should think about Austin, Texas when you're ready to come back to the US, because I had expressed that I was thinking of coming back to the US but did not want to go back to New York. She's like, come to Austin, there's a beautiful community of people here who are, doing this work. And 6 months later, I was back in the jungle and realizing that my time there had come to a close and I needed to leave. And I decided I was going to go to Austin. And so I booked a ticket to Austin, and within 2 days of arriving, I was at my first Sister Soup. And that was a few years ago. And in the years since coming back to the US, I've done a number of things. I facilitated for a while, retreats, ceremonies, coaching, body work, all of the ways that I had been working with folks while in Mexico and Peru. I kept that work up in that path. I followed that path and continued serving medicine and facilitating. But I knew that, at least in this past year, that something was shifting, and that there's a beautiful saying we have in the medicine space, which is, when the ceremony's over, the real work begins. And we taught in our field in psychedelics, or at least it's not my field anymore, but the integration work is fundamental, arguably the most important piece of the puzzle when you agree to do this type of transformational work. It's really about how are we actually applying and embodying and living the insights. And so it's been a slow and natural unwinding of my medicine path, or at least a pause on holding that altar and that space, because it is very energetically, physically, emotionally big work. And it requires a lot of inner resource to hold that space. And as far as my own personal healing with the medicines, I sort of arrived at this really beautiful state of feeling very complete at the moment with that work, and actually more inspired by what's happening here in this realm. And so I've transitioned from being a facilitator into a founder and creator and bridge builder and synthesizer of all of the various modalities and spaces and really like paradigms that I've lived and worked and trained in. Because what I have discovered on my own path is just like the body. It's really, we are an organism comprised of many systems within systems that are all interconnected. And just like, taking care of a garden, we have different parts to tend to that are going to impact other parts of the body or of the garden. And really the approach now and the work that I'm interested in now is about optimizing those systems. So the organism, so the person, so we can just let that natural intelligence emerge that is going to, bring a person into a state of coherence and balance and natural thriving. But of course, you need to have these periods of rest and of seasons of just, the soil healing or pouring medicine into the land or into the body. And then there are seasons to grow and to thrive and to bloom. And so, yeah, it feels really good to arrive here, this place of, oh, it all really does fit. Like all parts of my life and all parts of me get to be here and are vital and integral. So that's where we are right now.
You have so many beautiful parallels throughout your whole journey. It's really cool to hear about how when you were serving medicine, you were really thrown into it without even really thinking about what was happening. You just found yourself in this space where you were serving medicine and taking medicine and holding space for other people. And the way you described it, it sounds like kind of a whirlwind of just movement and energy and people going through these really intense, life-changing experiences while you were there to oversee it and facilitate it. And that's really similar to what you described during COVID as a nurse, but it's almost like in a parallel universe, like a completely different version of that, of you still being a facilitator of experiencing, of other people experiencing their emotions. You're still facilitating these transformations that people are going through, but maybe you didn't feel so helpless anymore. Maybe you felt like you had more agency over it and there was actually space for your compassion and space for your empathy. And you were able to use that empathy because that was the point versus in the hospital where they don't really create space for empathy. You felt it coming through. I'm just seeing so many parallels and with your childhood and your exploration. And I'm so glad that you honored these parts of you that felt pulled into these directions, these energetic pulls that brought you to the jungle, that brought you to Peru, that allowed you to meet Audrey. Audrey's also how I know about Sister Soup. I knew Audrey from my corporate career 10 years ago.
Yeah, she told me.
Yeah. So it's really beautiful, just all these different ways that your life has brought facets of who you are together into this story. I've never heard you tell this story this way, and it's really moving. And I admire your strength and your courage and your belief in yourself, especially after going through in high school, having so much alienation and being disconnected from the self, to reclaim that and to not just reclaim it, but go deep, going into the jungle and becoming one with the medicine and coming out the other side and helping others heal through that. It's just really remarkable. And I so admire your courage and your bravery. I respect it so much, and it shines through you when you have a conversation with you, sitting in a room with you. You can feel all of the courage that you've shown throughout your whole life. It's palpable. You can feel the transformations that you've gone through and the ones to come. I can feel like you're not just a person sitting in front of me. There's movement in your energy. You can feel it moving and churning and growing. It's amazing.
Thank you, sis.
So thank you so much for sharing your story. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, can they reach out to you on Instagram? Do you have a website?
Yeah. Instagram is a great place to connect with me now, as I'm in the process of building more ways to connect with me online, building a community and a business. But Instagram is a great place.
What's your handle?
Isa, ISA_modern medicine. I also have a website where you can read more about my story and see a couple of interviews that I've done and a documentary that I made of my time in the jungle featuring one of my teachers there, also named Isabel. And yeah, that's the way to connect with me right now.
Okay, I'll put your website in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. As I've said since the very beginning of our friendship, I am honored to be your friend.
I'm honored to be your friend.
Just for everyone listening, I tell Isa this, I would say 90% of the times that we see each other.
We didn't even get to tell about our ceremony journey.
Oh, yes. We'll have to talk about that another time.
We'll talk about it another time. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. I'm so grateful to be in each other's lives.
I am too. I'm so inspired by you. I'm inspired by the beauty that you have created in this home, but also in your life as well, and how you're taking your story and your origin story and turning it, alchemizing it into medicine for others, into art, into something bigger than just the story or it's really beautiful. It's important.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you're following along with the podcast wherever you're listening. Make sure to like or subscribe, leave a comment. All of those ways of engaging are also ways that the podcast reaches more people like you. So it really does help with the algorithm and all that stuff. And also, if you want to send me a DM or leave a comment to just let me know that you're enjoying the podcast, it means a lot to me and inspires me to keep going. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.